This is a complete audiobook of the essence of Ribhu Gita, translated in Krishnamurthy Iyer in 2001. The following verses constitute the teachings of Saiva to Ribhu, who in turn transmits those teachings to his disciple Nidhaga Rishi. The treatise goes by the name Ribhu Gita. 5. The universe was neither born, nor maintained, nor dissolved. This is the plain truth. The basic screen of pure being awareness stillness, devoid of all the moving shadow pictures of name and form of the universe, is the soul, eternal existence. 6. Some may argue that this universe of duality, multiple existences, is a factual second reality, clearly seen by the senses operated by the mind. But then, are the senses anything apart from the mind? Can they function without the support of the mind in which they are embedded? What is this mind except a bundle of thoughts? What are thoughts except evanescent ripples in the still, limitless ocean of pure being awareness self, which is the sole existence without a second? Che 2 v.34. 7. The illusion of the universe is in the unitary, undifferentiated, still ocean of existence, awareness, self, body, senses, mind, intellect, and jivas, embodied souls, are nothing but evanescent ripples not apart from that soul self. The state of firm abidance in that thought, free, alert, awareness self constitutes integral perfection, yoga, wisdom, moksha, sahaja samadhi, the state of Saiva and the state of Atman. Self, which scriptures proclaim by the title of Brahman. 11. There never was a mind, nor any of its countless forms like world, jivas, etc. There isn't the least doubt that all these are the form of the eternally undifferentiable Supreme Brahman Self. This is the truth. The one who hears this great secret diligently and understands completely abides as Brahman Self. Greatness of Vidya Mukta. 12. With all objective knowledge banished, with no trace of thought or nescience, with all the three states of waking, dream, and sleep wiped out, with all thought of death and birth abolished, and ever established in the spontaneous blissful state of Brahman Self, the condition of the Vidya Mukha cannot be conceived, and much less expressed in words. 13. The continued repetition of I am self Brahman constitutes the sole mantra japa leading to mukti, liberation. All other mantra japas connected with diverse gods should be firmly eschewed, as they aim at mundane objectives other than the self. All other mantra japas always entangle one inextricably in the bondage of worldly enjoyments. Sat Chitnananda Self-Siva and his worship. 14. On the eternal and infinite screen of Sat Chitnananda Self-Siva, by his own power, Sakti is projected as the moving shadow picture of the universe, in manifestation, and into that, again, it is absorbed in dissolution. All luminaries like the sun, moon, fire, stars, and lightning derive their luminosity as a gracious gift from the Sakti inherent in that screen of self-Siva only. Though bright in themselves, they can only obscure and cannot reveal the Siva screen which they cover up. Out of fear of that Siva, their creator, Devas and Asuras, gods and demons, are ever alertly engaged in their ordained duties. That Siva must be meditated upon and realized to be the self, by making the restless mind stay still and alert after it has been adequately restrained, and completely prevented from the pursuit of sense objects, namely, shadow pictures on the screen of the self. All shadow pictures removed, what remains is pure awareness, the spotlessly effulgent screen. So thus Siva reveals himself spontaneously as the sole eternal Sat Chitnanda Self, the very essence of the nature of the worshipper. The Jivan Mukta. 15. 16. The Jivan Mukta has his consciousness completely dissolved beyond recognition in his Brahman self. Eternally alone in his self, he is ever lost in the enjoyment of the bliss of his Brahman self. The Vidya Mukta. And 17. The Vidya Mukta is free from the least trace of thought. He abides all alone in his effulgent pure awareness. The term literally means the disembodied liberated person. He is the matured apt who at the moment of death abides as the pure Sat Chit Ananda self. Figuratively, the term means mature liberated being who, while still alive, abides as the pure Sat Chit Ananda self without awareness of body and the world around him. Self in intense unbroken bliss, totally oblivious of limited forms, in a state of Mahamaunam, stillness of body, speech, and mind. 18 is So, 19. There is not an atom apart from the self, which is the integral, undifferentiated perfection of whole being. Soul, world, and creator are inseparable from the self. The reality of these is the reality of the self only. Existence. 21. All objective knowledge, all thought forms, all visible objects, all things heard, all questions and answers, all the food consumed and all other illusions, not being apart from the self, should be regarded as Brahman self only. 22. Therefore, one should practice the habit of regarding everything as Brahman self only, until all thought of things other than the self is lost. This condition once achieved, one should not give room for any thought and should ever abide in Mahamaunam, peace of total stillness. See H.14, V.38. 23. Anything seen as other than Brahman self is bound to cause fear and trouble. Therefore, it behoves one to stick to the single attitude that everything sensed is Brahman self alone. In due course, even this one thought must be given up in order to abide firmly in the free, undisturbed, blissful state of the soul Brahman self. 24. The total discarding of the mind is alone victory, achievement, bliss, yoga, wisdom, and liberation. The sacrifice of the mind is, in fact, the totality of all sacred sacrifices. 25. The firm denial of the existence of the mind and the firm belief in the existence of Brahman self is the sure way to the conquest of mind, leading to the experience of the soul effulgent self. 26. If one gives the slightest room for the thought that the mind exists, pure awareness itself will vibrate as the ruffled mind, which is the parent of all trouble and illusions. Therefore, one should ever abide in the conviction that there is no mind, and that the pure awareness self is the sole existence. This is the easy way to conquer the mind with all its vagaries. 27. There is no such thing as the troublesome mind, no world of names and forms, not the least bit of ego. All these are nothing but the perfect Brahman self, which I am. In this conviction, one should abide firmly until one achieves the state of sleepless sleep, which is alert peace eternal. A true samadhi, a samadhi. 28. 28. To hold on to the conviction born of self-inquiry that I am no doubt the supreme Brahman self, and the world picture thereon, though evanescent, is no doubt I am self only, and to abide still and blissful in that conviction is the acme of all sadhanas, like divine worship, charitable gifts, spiritual austerities, mantra japa, and samadhi as well. 29. The self alone is the spontaneous self-effulgent awareness. That alone is eternal bliss. That alone is existence everlasting. That alone is all-embracing perfection. The sole Godhead without a rival and the sole primordial stuff of the universe. In the conviction born of this experience, one should ever abide as the sole I am, the Supreme Self. Sahaja Samadhi. A. 30. I-30. It's remaining alertly aware and thought-free, with a still mind devoid of differentiation of self and non-self, even while being engaged in the activities of worldly life, is called the state of Sahaja Nirvikalpa Samadhi, till the natural state of abidance in the self when all differentiation has ceased. This is called Akhandakara Vritti, the I of infinite perfection, as contrasted with the I am the body notion of those who have not realized the self. Maturing of Sahaja. 31. Abidance inside Samadhi is the hallmark of a Jivan Mukta. With progressive development towards this state, an intensity of blissful peace is attained, leading on to the 4 successive stages of perfection in Samadhi. 32. That realized person who abides in the Brahman self and has lost all feelings of differentiation of self and non-self is the Jnani or Mukta Purusha. Such a Jnani is rare to find even by searching among millions of people. If one has the lucky opportunity of getting his darshan, personal view and contact, one attains purification from all his sins, and what is more, such a person's ego gets liquidated at once. 33. Darshan of the matured Jnani constitutes the acme of purification, of baths taken in sacred waters, divine worship, mantra jip, spiritues, charitable acts, and devotional worship of Lord Saiva himself. To find and to gain access to the sacred presence of such a Jnani is the luckiest of opportunities that one could ever obtain in this world. 34. Worshipful service rendered unto such a Jnani Satguru quickens one's spiritual wisdom to attain the bliss of Jivan Mukti. If continued further, it bestows on the disciple even the status of Vidya Mukti. Therefore, if one is keen on being released from bondage into the freedom of Mukti, the one infallible means of achieving that aim is the loving and worshipful service of the Jnani Satguru. 35. Firmly established in the self, undisturbed by the least ripple of thought, as still as an idol of stone or wood, dissolved completely in Brahman self, even as water is in milk, with awareness devoid of all impurities of thought and drowsiness, standing clear as the pure sky, the grandeur of the Jnani's nishta, firm stance in the self, defies thought and expression. The sine qua non of mukti is Siva's grace. 36. That in which the whole universe is born, and into which it is absorbed in dissolution, is the Siva self, devoted. 37. Those engaged in the pursuit of knowledge of the Brahman self, happening to get involved in the mundane pleasures of sex, should regard such pleasures as merely faint shadows of the bliss of the self. They should never even dream of worldly pleasures. 38. As the self is sat, meditative contact with the self is the true satsanga, association with sadhus who abide in the self. As Brahman self is the highest, association with the self is Mahatsanga, highest association. 39. The sadhaka practicing meditation on the self should always think firmly that all diversities of soul, world, and creator are the undifferentiated Brahman self only. By practice, his consciousness is freed from thoughts, after which he should give up the above thought also, and abide always in the thought-free state of the self. 40. Abidance in the state of thought-free alert awareness is the state of mukti beyond thought and expression. The emergence of thought is the bondage of untold suffering. Abidance in the self is the true non-dual samadhi, and that alone leads one to the eternal bliss of mukti. 41. The great illusions, maya associated with God Aiswara, avidya associated with individual souls, mind, inchkrul's world and its creator. All names and forms, and all mental conceptions are nothing but the self, so one should ever abide in this conviction. 42. All worlds and creatures are only thought forms. They are nothing but the mind, which is a bundle of thoughts, which again are nothing more than ripples in the still ocean of awareness self, and certainly nothing apart from that self. Therefore, one should abide in the firm conviction that all objects are only I am self Brahman. 43. So there are no such things as achieved objectives and the efforts leading to them, association with the wise or the ignorant, efforts of learning and knowledge acquired, acts of inquiry and practice, the learner or the learned, and any goals achieved. What exists is only Brahman, the effulgent awareness self. 44. One should be firm in the conviction that there are no charitable acts, sacred waters and kshetras, pilgrim centers, no loss or gainer, dakti and wisdom, and no knower or known. All these thought forms are bound to be dissolved and lost in the Brahman self, which is the sole existence. 45. The Bhavana I am Brahman self swiftly takes one to mukti. As the continued reading of the texts generate a paradigm that Bhavanat Bakespear unerringly to the goal, he should. In verses 45 to 50, the word Bhavana means lit, feeling the faith based on the word of the teacher and the scriptures, and in the unremitting abidance in the belief thereof. Always dwell on the written words, dealing with the Brahman self. 46. The illusion that one is the body and that the world is basic reality has remained soaked over a long, long time and cannot be got rid of by the casual reading and mere understanding of the truth. The basic illusion can be effaced only by a long and unremitting practice of the bhavana that all this is I am Brahman self. 47. Everything is only a concoction of time, space, and energy. All else is the trite talk of people who dislike the effort of sadhana, which takes them to the self. This talk is based on their dense ignorance of the self. Only by persistent practice and experience of sadhana can one arrive at the truth that all concepts of soul's world and the cause thereof are just evanescent shadows on the screen of Siva self Brahman. 48. There is never such a thing as conception of names and forms. No such thing as the conceiving mind. No such thing as a person lost in samsara, and no such things as the world and its creator. Everything that is seen to exist must be realized to be no other than the soul, pure awareness being Brahman self. Everything is Sat Chit Ananda self only. 49. Whatever is found to exist is Sat existence only. Whatever is pleasurable is Ananda bliss only. So one should ever abide in the bedrock bhavana of Sat Chit Ananda. Never for once should one slip, even inadvertently, into the disastrous bhavana that one is the body and that the world is real. 50. One should abide in the rock-firm bhavana that everything is only Brahman self and I am that Brahman self. By this bhavana all thought movements and nescience will disappear, resulting in the eternal abidance in the soul Sat Chit Ananda self. 51. By abiding in the self, the wandering mind is reduced to perfect stillness after being freed from all nescience and thought currents. It gets lost in the Sat Chit Ananda self in the same way that water is lost when mixed with milk. This unitary state of abidance in the self is called Atman Nishtha by the wise who have attained perfection. Sahaja Nishtha, or the natural state. 52. Having realized that the world picture on the screen, self, is evanescent and essentially non-existent, one should ever remain still and blissful in the firm conviction of being a sole Brahman self only. This conviction should be maintained even while functioning as an individual in the world of name and form. This matured state of abidance in the self is called sahajanishta, the natural state. 53. In that blissful self, wherein there is no action of body, speech, and mind, no virtuous or sinful karma, action and the fruits thereof, one should remain still, eschewing the least trace of thought. 54. In that self, wherein there is neither conceiver nor conception of the world of names and forms, one should remain blissfully still, eschewing the least trace of thought. 55. In that self wherein desire, anger, covetousness, confusion, bigotry, and envy are all absent, in that self wherein there is no thought of bondage or release, one should abide blissfully still, eschewing the least ripple of thought. 56. Firmly abiding in the self, one acquires the totality of all knowledge and achieves the successful completion of all endeavors and duties. In that state, one should abide blissful and still, eschewing the least ripple of thought. Verses 51 to 60 herein deal with practice of Abidance, or Atmanishta non-dual state, or Abidance in the self. 57. Mind merged completely in the self, one becomes a lord without rival, steeped in bliss beyond compare. In that state, one should abide still, free from the least trace of thought. 58. I am that self which is integral existence, awareness, bliss, the sole impartite Brahman self, firm in the conviction born of this experience. One should abide still, free from the least trace of thought. 59. In the conviction that I am the self, in which no thought, ego, desire, mind, or confusion can exist, one should abide still, free from trace of thought. 60. The firm faith of being the self is sufficient to dispel all thought and establish one in Brahman self. In due course of this practice, even the thought involved in that faith fades away, leading to the spontaneous effulgence of the self. If a person hearkens to this teaching and practices the faith, even if he is a great sinner, he is washed clean of all his sins and is established in Brahman self. 61. There is certainly no such thing as mind with its constituents of thought and thought forms of objects. In this conviction, one should ever abide still and at peace in the state of thought-free, alert, awareness self, which endures after all sadhanas and its rigors have exhausted themselves in Brahman self. 62. Having gained the experience that there is no creator, no maya, no duality, and no objects at all, and that pure awareness self alone exists, one should ever remain still and peaceful in that state of selfhood. 63. What if a person gives heed to these teachings, he would certainly gain the grace of Lord Siva and attain the state of selfhood, even though he is immersed in the dense darkness of nescience, which could not be banished by the glare of a million suns. 64. Why waste words? This is the truth in a nutshell. 65. Only that Janani who teaches, thou art the thought-free, alertly aware, absolutely still, ever blissful, intensely peaceful, unqualified Brahman self, is the true Satguru, and others are not. 66. Unbroken abidance in the state of alert awareness, unruffled by thoughts, is self-realization. That is at once the spotless Jivan Mukti and the magnificent Vaidya Mukti. This state is easily attainable only for those who have earned the divine grace of Siva by deep devotion to him and not for others. So what is stated here is the import in a nutshell of the message of that charming crest jewel of the Vedas known as the Upanishads. 67. Those who give heed to this message and abide in accordance with it will forthwith attain mukti, liberation. They will not suffer from the least particle of affliction. They will enjoy a bliss far greater than the bliss attained from this and all other worlds. They and their environments will be filled with the plenitude of auspicious events. Totally free from all trace of fear, they will never again enter the cycle of births and deaths. They will become the immutable Brahman self. All this we swear is the truth beyond doubt. By our Lord Siva, again and again we swear that this is the fundamental truth. 68. That state of still, pure, effulgent awareness is moksha, the state beyond compare. Those who maintain an unbroken abidance in that supreme state will never more be touched by suffering or confusion and will be absolved from all duties. Such duties, if any, will somehow be completed without any volition on their part. They will eternally abide as the sole supreme self. 69. By the persistent and continued bhayana of I am the Brahman self, all thoughts and feelings of differentiation of self and non-self will drop off, and permanent abidance in Brahman self will be achieved. This bhavana is possible only for those with a keen, inquiring mind intent on knowing the self, and not for those who are indifferent about self-knowledge. 70. Ignorance and indifference in regard to the inquiry of the truth about oneself is the storehouse of nescience and trouble, blocking the view of the self, and creating in a split second all sorts of illusions and harassment of mental worry. Non-inquiry renders bhavana impossible. 71. In short, non-inquiry will steep one forever in the ocean of samsara, earthly suffering. There is no greater enemy for one than non-inquiry. Therefore, this habit must be overcome in order to fix the mind in the bhavana which leads to abidance in the self. 72. Inquiry should be made this wise. With the kind help of the Satguru, one should inquire, who am I? What is this world? What is the reality behind all these? 73. Staying in the company of sadhus, those engaged in the pursuit and enjoyment of the bliss of the Sat Self, and respectfully questioning the Satguru Janani, one should first make oneself clear about the objective to be obtained. 74. The conscious introspective concentration of self-inquiry, who am I, kills all thoughts and destroys the dense. In all the 13 verses of chapter 32, the term bhavana is to be understood as faith or firm belief in aham brahmam, I am the self. Darkness of nescience, it effaces all worry, it illuminates the intellect with the radiance of pure awareness, it wipes out all conceptual confusions, it fixes one in Siva self, it transforms a host of impending disasters into auspicious events, and lastly, it destroys the ego mind utterly with all its afflictions. 75. Only by those strong-willed persons who make earnest and persistent self-inquiry will the turbulent mind be controlled and fixed still in the practice of firm vihemana. In due course, all thoughts and nescience will disappear, yielding place to the effulgent awareness self of mukti. 76. One should relentlessly pursue self-inquiry until all conceptual forms of creature, world, and creator merge and disappear in the pure thought-free, alert awareness self, enabling one to abide in that bhavana of the experience. I am the Brahman self. ch.32, v.27. 77. It is only the mind which appears as the world in bondage. There is no world other than the mind. On inquiry, this mind turns out to be nothing more than a group of ripples, thoughts, in the still ocean of pure awareness Siva self. I am that Siva self, only, and there is nothing apart from me. One should ever abide in the conviction born of this experience. 78. There is no world apart from the mind. What appears as the world is only the mind. If this mind is investigated, it turns out to be nothing more than a bundle of thoughts based on the primary thought of I am the body called the ego. If this ego I is inquired into and its identity searched, it gets swallowed up without a trace in the pure awareness being self. One should maintain this firm bhavana I am self Siva until that state of being the Siva self becomes the spontaneous experience free from the effort of bhavana. 79. In me, the pure awareness self, the universe is born, maintained, and dissolved as the mind. Therefore, there are no mind and thought forms of objects apart from me, the self. In this firm experience, one should ever abide. 80. One should ever abide as pure Siva self by the firm experience that there are no thought forms of creature, world, and creator apart from the mind, which is just an array of ripples in me, the still ocean of pure awareness self. and therefore I am the sole being Siva self only. 81. Even as the world, seen in my dream, is not apart from me but only my creation, even so the world of the waking state is only a creation made by me in the medium of my pure awareness self. In this experience, one should firmly abide. 82. The rock-firm conviction of I am the self is the sure mark of firm abidance in the self. Abidance in that conviction under all conditions is true divine worship, meditation on God, incantation of mantras, practice of right conduct, contemplation, integral yoga wisdom of the self, and moksha as well. 83. Whatever appears as Maya, creator, creature, mind, world, names and forms are the pure Brahman self, only and not apart from that self. 84. Steady abidance in the rock-firm conviction born off the experience of asperity experience. Yege, total dissolution of the mindseeker wisdom, true wisdom, and jivan mukti as well. 85. Whatever names and forms are seen by me in my dream are not anything apart from me. Even so, this world seen by me in my waking state is not anything apart from me, the awareness self that I am. The wise one should give up all differentiation of self and non-self and abide as pure self only. 86. If this world of the waking state is not evanescent in its nature, whatever is seen in the waking state must be seen during sleep also. Since I as pure self exist alone and always, there is no room for thought of non-self world. I self Brahman is the sole existence. 87. No world exists during the absence of the mind, and there is no mind apart from my awareness. So mind and world are nothing apart from the self, and I am ever that sole existence awareness Brahman self. So the wise one should abolish all thought of differentiation of self and non-self. 88. I see neither mind nor world during my sleep. In my dream there is mind with its creation, the dream world. The dream world is falsified in my waking state. But I self-exist always. Arguing thus, one must give up all differentiation of self and non-self, and ever abide firmly as the thought, free alert awareness self-Brahman. 89. All diversities of world, mind, Maya, confusing power of Brahman, wakefulness, dream, talk of you, and me are evanescent, and yet not apart from the self. Thus wise one should give up all thought of self and non-self and abide as self only. 90. In dim light, the illusion of a serpent is seen in a rope, and this serpent is nothing but the rope. Even so, all illusion of non-self exists in the self only. Thus wise one should give up all thought of self and non-self and ever abide firmly in the peace of the self. 91. In the wisdom of integral experience, I am the non-dual, transcendental, motionless, peaceful, bondage, freedom, notion-free, sky of pure consciousness only. With this experience, one should reject all differentiation of self and non-self and ever abide firmly in the peace of Brahman self. 92. One should give up all hatha yogic practices like breath control, all religious dogmas and their diverse sadhanas, and be ever satisfied in simple abidance as the self only. 93. Only those who contemplate on Lord Shiva self, the pure supporting screen of all manifestation, gain the pure experience of Sahaja Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Apart from this devotion to Lord Shiva, the pure alert awareness self, there are no other means leading to liberation. 94. The non-dual soul being existing in deep sleep conjures up a world in the dream state. Even so, the shadow world conjured up in the waking state is the work of the power, inherent in one's own Brahman self. Abiding firmly in the experience of pure Brahman self, one finds that the mind and all its confabulations are lost forever. 95. One should remain firm in the conviction I am the self and reject all thoughts like I am this body and this world is real. If one maintains this habit unremittingly, this false belief will drop away even as a flower held in the hand slips away when one falls into deep slumber. 96. One is solely responsible for one's own liberation or bondage, since the choice of destroying the restless mind or allowing it to roam at large rests with that one only. Therefore, one should conquer the restless mind by steady abidance in the pure thought-free alert awareness self only. This steady abidance is moksha. 97. You are the sole supreme Godhead, the Self. There is nothing apart from you. This we declare to be the ultimate truth after a complete analysis of all the scriptures. By the holy feet of Siva, we swear this to be the truth beyond all doubt. By the feet of the Satguru, we swear again that this is the truth declared by the Upanishads. 98. All charitable gifts, all pilgrimages to sacred places, all sorts of mantra japa and worship of diverse gods must be firmly given up in favor of steady practice of the teachings of this book only. 99. All yogic practices, all philosophic pursuits, all devotional exercises, and all faiths and beliefs should be abandoned. One should confine oneself to practice of the teachings of this book only. 100. By the sole practice of the teachings of this book, all confusion and ignorance will be destroyed. Firm abidance in the self will be the positive result. With the fusion of the wisdom and peaceful bliss in the self, mukti will be attained. 101. Only when all sins are washed off by the practice of virtues running through many lives, one gets the rare opportunity of securing this treatise and practicing its tenets. By the feet of Lord Siva, we declare that only those whose cycle of births and deaths has come to an end with this life will ever get this treatise in their hands and practice its teachings. Verses 102 to 121. These 20 contain the declarations of the 102. O my Lord Satguru, by thy grace I have in a split second shed all sense of differentiation of self and non-self. I have attained the certainty that all is Brahman and am, that Brahman self. I have become settled in the eternal bliss of Brahman self. 103. I am verily the Sat Chit Ananda Brahman self. I am the eternal undisturbed peace, devoid of name and form. I am the flawless integral whole of all existence. Firmly I am settled in my soul Brahman self. 104. Oh, I have become Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Mahesa, Sadasiva, Paramswara, and his spouse Parvati, Vinayaka, Subramanya, cohorts of sides, host, Sivaganas, and devotees of Lord Siva, all rolled into one. 105. 5. I am myself all the devas, celestials, beings, and asuras, denizens of the netherworld, Indra, the chief of the devas, the lord of the 8 cardinal directions, the community of sages, the swarm of Rakshasas, demons, and in fact, the denizens of this and all other worlds. 106. I have become the 5 elements, multitudinous worlds, scattered in the skies, all existing things and their histories, all the Vedas, all the diversities of name and form. 107. At one stroke I have become the bodies, senses and soulming them, the mind, intellect, intuition, ego, the primal nescience and the restless commotion of spirit, and in short all that is seen and known. 108. That gracious person who gives these teachings is now the embodiment of Lord Paramswara, his Devi Parvati. Vinayaka and God Shamukha all rolled into one. 109. He is again Nandikeswara, Dattatreya, Dakshinamurti, and in short, the Supreme Lord Siva himself. 110. After being duly initiated into these teachings by the Satguru, the disciple must, as life-like lasts in him, provide his teacher liberally with money, food, clothing, and shelter, and loving devotion. This is the sine qua non for the disciple's mukti. 111. Further, he should adorn his forehead and body with vibhuti, sacred ash, in the prescribed manner, as this use of vibhuti allures Lord Siva's grace which removes all impediments to salvation. 112. The habitual smearing of the body with vibhuti is called pasupatha vratam, austerity in devotion to Siva. 113. 113. I am ever the eternal, pure, all-knowing, free, unshakable, non-dual, integral self. This is the firm conviction of the experience of the jiva and mukta in the self. 114. Set mature jnani who is lost in the mahamaunam, total stillness of the pure effulgent awareness Brahman self, devoid of the least trace of nescience, totally devoid of all consciousness of the body and its three states of waking, dream, and sleep, devoid of all distinctions of name and form and devoid of any thought of bondage or freedom, is avidya mukta. 115. Thou hast, O Lord Satguru, taken me across the boundless ocean of Sara in the boat of self-knowledge. To me flounder... To thee. 116. Salutations to thee, my Lord Satguru. Thou hast destroyed my illusion that I am the body, and that the world is apart from me and is real. Thou hast given me the experience of my own Brahman self. Thou hast destroyed my wrong belief that karma, action, is the road to salvation, and showing that knowledge alone could make one free. Thou hast given me my salvation in the self. 117. To that divine grace embodied, to that omnipresence beyond compare, to that Siva self Satguru, I render devout salutation. 118. To that Satguru, who is the core of myself, who destroyed nescience by the gift of awareness self, to that embodiment of self-knowledge, do I offer these salutations. 119. Salutations to the Satguru, who is the embodiment of undisturbed peace, without attributes, eternal purity, all-pervasive infinite sky of consciousness and integral perfection. Note the following verses 120 and 121 contain Ribhu's exhortation to Nidagha. 120. In reply to the words of Nidagha, Ribhu replies thus, O my son, you are now no doubt firmly settled in the bliss of Brahman self, having been freed from all illusion and nescience. All the same, as abundant precaution, until you attain Vidya Mukta, you must assiduously practice continued abidance in the self. 121. Aspirants of self-knowledge will find their success accelerated by practical bodily worship of Siva. Living in a Siva Kshetra, neighborhood of Siva temple, they should offer worship to Siva Mahalingam, wearing the sacred Vaibhuti and Rudraksha, garland of a specified sort of beads, and repeating the name of Siva with loving devotion.